And
the remnants of Hurricane Ida proved to be deadly and destructive. I'm Wendy Gillette in New York City, where a state of emergency was declared.
Also, thousands of firefighters worked to battle the blaze near Lake Tahoe as thousands of homes are threatened.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
A Joplin woman is sentenced to 25 years in prison for abusing her daughter. This is KOAM News at Noon. I'm Zach Dodge. Authorities say the abuse took place between 2018 and March of 2020. 24-year-old Celia Laura Licon was charged with 2 counts of first-degree domestic assault, 2 counts of abuse or neglect of a child, and endangering the welfare of a child in March of 2020 for abusing her daughter. She pled guilty to 2 counts of assault and abuse. A Jasper County judge gave concurrent sentences of 25 years for assault and 15 years for abuse. School districts in Jasper and Newton counties in Missouri see COVID cases in the first week of school. In Carthage, there were 10 active cases among students, 1 staff case, and 47 students under quarantine. And in Neosho, 22 students have tested positive, along with 3 staff members, and 62 students are considered close contacts.
If we can manage like we are right now to keep the case level low, I think we'll be okay. We're below or right at a little over 1% with students quarantined and less than 0.5% of them positive. That's doable.
Cases among students went from 17 to 22 from Tuesday to Wednesday in Neosho, and quarantines went up from 48 to 62. Kansas Governor Laura Kelly announces that she's forming a work group called Safer Classrooms. The governor says it's to protect kids and school staff from COVID-19. The group will be made up of pediatricians, family physicians, pharmacists, and psychologists.
There is nothing more important than keeping our students healthy and alive. The Safer Classrooms work group will help all of us make informed decisions to protect our children and our communities. And finally,
the governor says the work group will meet weekly to highlight the importance of protecting kids from COVID-19's Delta variant. Many southern hospitals in states like Florida, Texas, South Carolina, and Louisiana are running low on oxygen. But what about the 4-state area? Joplin's Mercy Hospital says that while their oxygen use has roughly tripled in the last 6 to 8 weeks, they aren't having trouble getting oxygen. But smaller operations like Kansas Medical Supply in Columbus, Kansas, are feeling the pinch. They provide at-home and portable use oxygen tanks, and manager Crystal Blake says they've had to cut back on the number of tanks they can provide customers. And now we're joined by Michael Hayslip with our first look at the forecast.
Zach, I tell you what, it's a little bit deceiving because when I take a look over our tower cam at 7th range line, it's a beautiful blue sky. Yet here at the mothership, almost feels like there's a haze out there.
Yeah.
And we can't say it's, the West Coast wildfires or anything like that. We just don't have that crystal blue. Now, I know other places do, and it's really just some low-hanging, very, very light cloud cover. Don't have any precipitation with it. The wind continues to shift, as evident by our arrows throughout the course of today. Early this morning, we were coming in due east. Now we're coming in from the southeast, and you can tell where that dividing line is as far as our temperatures go, because we're barely hitting 80 out in the eastern portion of southwest Missouri and Monette and Stockton, and now we're approaching 90 in places like Independence and Sedan. So the warmer temperatures and the cold front running right through the middle of the 4 states. There is that light cloud cover I was talking about. Now, all this rain has stayed up through portions of north central Kansas and will continue to do so. We did not get any fallout from it, really broke up. In fact, it really didn't even make it to the Wichita area. As we take a look at the old severe thunderstorm risk map, there it is, right there through Nebraska and into northern Kansas is where it will remain for the rest of the afternoon. I guess it is kind of good that we don't see anything popping up along the East Coast. We'll get there in just a little second, but let's tackle our future track first. because Thursday night into Friday morning. See, look at everything out to our west right there. Eventually, we can't stay out of the fray forever, especially up to the north. We'll get some thunderstorm activity overnight, but it's not going to be anything severe. As a matter of fact, a little rain might be needed with as dry as it's been. And then Saturday morning, we're going to go at it again. Saturday, especially to the north, we're looking quite wet for Labor Day weekend. Our weather trend here for today, we're talking about, high 80s averaging off, because obviously we've already got some high 80s on the board. But ending up in the 90s, and then, look at tomorrow. Ooh, that's going to be a little bit of a hot, humid, and hazy one. Now, speaking of severe weather, out on the East Coast, we've got Ida that is now pushing off the contiguous 48, but is still hammering portions of Nova Scotia. But of course, down south is where the cleanup now begins as we trace Ida back to its origins when it made landfall, remember, 16 years to the day after Katrina. Zach, I know you've got the latest in Nation.
Right, and it is crazy to see the track that storm did make, going all the way from the Gulf Coast into the northeastern part of the state in New York City.
Watch this.
That is insane.
Watch this. See that off the coast of Caracas? Mm-hmm. All right, up through Cuba, through the Gulf, re-intensifies. Cat 4 comes out of New Orleans, right through Tennessee and West Virginia, and now situated with the low pressure off Boston all the way up to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, that is crazy. Very cool. Thank you very much, Michael, for breaking that down for me. And as we just mentioned, it was a night of torrential rain, devastating floods, and tornadoes for people in the Northeast. The extreme weather came from what's left of Ida. This morning, residents are assessing the damage and waiting for floodwaters to recede. Wendy Gillette has the latest from New York City.
Rescue teams used boats on the flooded streets of Bridgeport, Pennsylvania this morning to check on stranded residents. Water still covers major roads in the Philadelphia area, following a night of some of the heaviest rain in decades. It all came from the remnants of Hurricane Ida. The storm triggered dangerous flooding and tornadoes up and down the East Coast.
Look at that tornado!
One twister rolled through the southern part of New Jersey, ripping the sides off some homes and turning others into rubble. In Maryland, another suspected tornado tore the roof off a warehouse. Last night was actually the first time the National Weather Service issued a flash flood emergency for New York City. The entire subway system was shut down overnight. Water gushed into some stations and onto trains filled with passengers. The storm is blamed for several deaths, including a person discovered drowned in the basement of this Queens home. Neighbors believe road construction played a role in the flooding. At airports across the Northeast, hundreds of flights were canceled, forcing thousands of passengers to spend the night in terminals. In Louisiana, hundreds of thousands of people are still without power, and many are waiting on long lines to get food, water, or fuel.
I woke up this morning, I got me a pillow and a blanket, and I said I'm going to go down there and sleep if I have to.
Ida made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane on Sunday, one of the strongest storms to ever hit the Gulf Coast. President Biden plans to visit on Friday. Wendy Gillette, CBS News, New York.
That's a look at today's top stories and weather in our first 7 minutes. Up next on KOAM News at Noon.
Flying could soon get a lot faster. I'm Michelle Medina with a company promising to carry passengers at speeds that break the sound barrier.
And later, you're going to love this fresh take on spaghetti. Topping Nation Watch, more than 4,200 firefighters battle the blaze near Lake Tahoe in California and Nevada, with those crews coming from as far away as Wisconsin and West Virginia. The fire grew to be about 320 square miles on Wednesday. Fire officials say gusty winds are calming and giving them a chance to throw all their resources into the fight. But so far, the fire has burned at least 700 homes and buildings and threatens at least 33,000 others. There could soon be a new and faster way to fly by the end of this decade. One company is promising planes that travel faster than the speed of sound, cutting international flight times in half. Nichelle Medina explains.
Pilot Bill Shoemaker is in this flight simulator preparing for supersonic speed.
In Mach 1.02, so we've gone through the sound barrier.
In a few months, Shoemaker will trade in the simulator for this, the XB-1, built by the company Boom Supersonic. Blake Scholl is CEO.
Our ultimate goal is high-speed flight for everybody.
After the XB-1 is tested, Boom will start building a larger passenger plane called the Overture. The company says it will travel up to 1,300 miles an hour at 60,000 feet. That means a flight from Newark to London could take 3.5 hours instead of 6.5. San Francisco to Tokyo could be done in 6 hours instead of 10. United Airlines is on board and says it will buy 15 of the planes once safety requirements are met.
Our goal is to complete all that rigorous safety testing and be ready to carry our first passengers safely in 2029.
The Concorde was the last supersonic jet to fly passengers, but with tickets costing $12,000, airlines struggled to find enough customers and shut down service in 2003. Boom plans to offer seats starting at $5,000.
Supersonic travel can be done. It can be done safely.
Former NTSB Chairman Robert Sumwalt says it will take years of testing before Boom's passenger planes are ready for takeoff.
I do believe the FAA will be extremely cautious in the approval of a product like this, and rightfully so.
Supersonic travel is loud and can only be done over oceans, but Boom says its engines will be quieter. The company is hoping to eventually get approval to fly over land and offer Mach speed on domestic flights. Nichelle Medina, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Boom Supersonic says its planes will be run on 100% sustainable aviation fuel. Still to come on KOAM News at Noon, Mr. Food.
It looks like spaghetti. It even tastes like spaghetti. Yet it's low carb, gluten-free, and keto-friendly. I'll give you a hint, but I don't want to squash any of your ideas.
But first, Michael Hayslip returns with your complete forecast.
Kind of give you a quick representation of what Zach and I were talking about earlier as far as kind of feeling like there's a little haze out there. And it's not like serious cloud cover or anything, but there we are outside of Television City. And then we've got beautiful blue sky hanging over Joplin right now. 84 degrees, feeling about like 88. Now the temperature really, the color contour of it has changed. Yesterday we rode that sedan to Veneta line, and now you can tell it's actually crept in here. We probably go about Neosho to Chanute, throw Joplin and Pittsburgh in there because they're going to warm up as well. And then you can carve out this section of southwest Missouri where temperatures are going to remain mild for most of the day, probably only get up to the mid-80s. We do have a heat advisory still left for 2 of our counties, but that's it, so certainly not as widespread as what we had yesterday. And heat indices, not even close to 100. In fact, the highest we see right now is just a 93 in Newata. That is not bad, comparatively speaking, for what we've had past couple of days. Skywatch Storm Tracker keeps all the activity up to our northwest, and that's exactly where the severe thunderstorm risk map is going to mimic it for the rest of today into the nighttime hours. So we really won't get much of any fallout of that. We're going to have to wait really until overnight into tomorrow morning. One thing they're waiting just to get rid of, that is the remnants of Ida, now pushing through Nova Scotia. And while we're at it, while Kate no longer exists, Larry does. And Larry is now a Category 1 hurricane. That's what we'll be tracking here the rest of this week for our tropics in the Atlantic Basin. As far as what we're looking at temperature-wise, we'll go high 80s, low 90s, of course, if you move down to the south and the west. That's where your hotter temps are going to be. And then let's talk about a little bit of that rain, because Thursday night into early Friday morning, here we go, mainly for the northern portions. If you work down south of I-44, not a whole lot of activity. And then we'll do it again for Friday night on into Saturday. So we start off Labor Day weekend on a little bit of a wet note with very mild temperatures for Saturday into Sunday. But then we'll go heat right back up, Zach, be up into the low 90s, feeling about like 95, 96 for Labor Day itself.
All right. Going to be a warm one then.
And humid.
And humid. My favorite combination.
Right.
Thanks, Michael. We take this time now to honor today's four-state hero. Corporal Larry Holtz from Oswego, Kansas, served in the Korean War from 1953 to 1955. During his service, Corporal Holtz was awarded the Korean Service Medal, the UN Service Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, and the Good Conduct Medal. We thank you for your service, Corporal Larry Holtz, our 4-state hero. Doesn't that look like a colorful, pretty plate right there? Let's go ahead and take a look at that in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen.
How many times have you walked into the produce department and looked at all the varieties of squash and just passed them by? Maybe you felt intimidated by them since you weren't sure how to cook them. Well, to help you out, today I want to introduce you to one of my personal favorites, the spaghetti squash. As you can see, they're yellow and oval in shape. Although there are a few different ways to cook them, we like placing a whole spaghetti squash in a large soup pot with about an inch of water. Once the water starts to boil, we'll cover it and let it cook for about 20 to 30 minutes or until it's fork tender. After letting it cool slightly, cut it in half, remove the seeds, and with a fork, scrape out the pulp. As you can see, the squash looks like strands of spaghetti. Today we're keeping things simple and flavorful by sauteing this in some butter, garlic, and a little salt and pepper. Right before taking it off the stove, sprinkle on some slivered basil. Then it's time to dig in. Talk about a delicious way to enjoy a low-carb and keto-friendly side dish. To get the recipe for what we call our garlicky spaghetti squash skillet, check out our website. I'm Howard in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen, where today we found a swirly spaghetti squash way for you to say, ooh, it's so good.
You can find this recipe along with a lot more good food from the Mr. Food Test Kitchen online. Just go to our website, KOAMnewsnow.com. Now here's a look at the 4-state market.
Another one of those days where we've got a 10-degree difference in our temperatures when you go out to the eastern portion of southwest Missouri compared to what we're seeing in SEK and northeast Oklahoma right now. So we'll kind of average it out. Go 91 degrees. Best shot for rain is going to be overnight into early Friday morning. And look at Friday. Whoo, after that rain settles in, that's going to be a hot and humid one tomorrow.
Here's what's coming up at 5. An Anderson, Missouri business rises to the occasion to help a McDonald County schools help them out if a bread supplier becomes stale. Plus, the pandemic has brought to light many mental health issues, one that it exacerbated hoarding. Learn about a new therapy that's helping hoarders to heal, and find out how you can help win grant funding for the Washington Family Hope Center. Hope you join us for those stories, a whole lot more. Of course, it's all coming up today on KOAM News at 5.
And thank you very much for joining us for KOAM News at Noon. We'll see you right back here at 5 o'clock.